Welcome to the writer reads The Strays of Lunar One. This is Book 2, The Unwanted, Chapter 16, Babysitters. Oliver looked from the man's hand to his face, and Lewis tensed. His friend, his alpha, didn't like being threatened, and Rohim Rorickson had stopped short of that, just barely. He watched as Oliver reached into the carry pouch and pulled out the box Captain Theron had given them, handing it over without arguing. The man took it and backed carefully away before turning to go back behind the counter in the shop's rear. Oliver looked at Lewis and jerked his chin toward the door. Time to go. Lewis frowned, and Oliver growled. It didn't have the impact in human form it might have had in wolf form, but the reprimand was there, and Lewis ducked his head. When Oliver turned for the door, Lewis followed. They both stopped when Rohim cleared his throat. "You're not going to ask?" he wanted to know. Oliver hesitated, resting his hand on the door handle. "I'll think about it." "You might want to think fast then," Rohim advised him, "because Xanil Blue, Ravlin, and Odyssey have all issued bulletins. And then there's the alert on the Wolf subnet." He let the sentence dangle, and Oliver closed his hand around the handle. Lewis watched as his alpha leaned his head on the door and closed his eyes. He saw when Oliver tested the handle and it didn't budge. His alpha sighed. "And you?" "Me?" Rohim asked, but Lewis knew the man understood exactly what Oliver was trying to get at. "You," Oliver growled. "Why don't you come out the back and talk about it?" Lewis waited. Oliver stood where he was, letting his head rest against the door just a little longer, and then he sighed. Letting go of the handle, he turned back around. "We can't get into any more trouble than we're already in," he told Lewis, leading them back through the shop. "And I think he's closed for the day." "He hasn't darted us yet," Lewis observed, and Oliver gave a soft snort of amusement. "Funny thing about women," Rohim started when they reached the counter. "They never really let you know how they're feeling, and the more they're feeling it, the less they tend to say." "And?" Oliver asked as the man gestured for them to come around the counter and follow him into the back part of the shop. "So, when Adele told me she'd consider us, and then told me she couldn't face a life in one spot, I knew she was conflicted, because she knew I could never be far from the station. I let her do what she needed, and she kept me at arm's length." Oliver blushed. "I don't see what this has to do with us," he began. "The gift she just sent me says a lot more about what she thinks of me than her letter says about you. I'd say she'd been holding out on me, but it's more like she was holding on to this for a special occasion, and you gave her a reason to send it." He held up the box and turned into the first door they came to. Oliver and Lewis followed, and Lewis was surprised to see it led to a small, neat apartment, rather than the storeroom he'd expected. A wall-to-ceiling display case on the other side of the room caught his eye, but Rohim directed them to the small dining table set in the far corner. "Cafe?" he asked, and Oliver nodded. There was one thing the shift from Ware to Lupari hadn't affected. He could still drink coffee. Something he was grateful for. He didn't want to imagine what the Alpha would be like without his morning brew. Rohim frowned. "I thought—" "We're fortunate," Oliver told him. "The Lupari strain we were mutated from has a tolerance for it." "And chocolate?" the man asked curiously. "That I'm not so sure of." "Then I'll make it butter cake," Rohim decided, pulling one out of the small pantry above the kitchen bench. The two wolves watched as he made morning tea with brief economical movements. Oliver frowned. "Just how much do we have to discuss?" Rohim paused his preparations long enough to lay a sheet of paper on the table. "I can organize a way off the station," he informed them. "How much?" Oliver counted, and the man named a price they couldn't have met even with all their funds intact. Oliver hung his head. "And the alternative?" Rohim bundled cups, cake, and condiments onto a tray and brought it over. "How much do you have available?" Oliver named a figure that made Lewis stare. Catching his expression, his alpha gave him an apologetic look. "I checked our accounts on the way over, but we can't access them. Any of them. Odyssey, the Shadows, Xanil, Ravlin. They all have traces in place. So the amount we do have? Lewis asked, and Oliver fished into his shirt pocket, pulling out the remaining cred sticks. This is it. They both looked to where Rohim was pouring the coffee. He looked up and smiled at them. No need to look so down, he told them, setting the coffee pot aside and pulling out the package they delivered. See this? They nodded and watched as he opened the box, taking out a delicate statue depicting a 3 Pegasi bunched together, wings outspread as they leapt from a cloud. Colour shifted through them, and Lewis realized he was looking at something made from glass, or... He frowned, not recognizing the material. Rohim caught his expression and smiled. You have no idea how long I've been looking for one of these. It's an artifact from Jelinar 5, sought after by many and only available through illicit means, which is not something Adele is known for. For her to give me this means two things. Lewis resisted the urge to groan, and Oliver stiffened. Rohim caught their reactions and snickered. It's not that bad, he assured them. Firstly, it means she still loves me. And secondly, it means she's asking me for more than a favor when she asks me to look after you. He lofted the statue in his hand. She's been holding on to this for a while, I think, trying to work out the right moment to give it to me. And you gave her that. Thank you. Lewis and Oliver exchanged glances, neither of them sure how to respond, and Rohim's face grew solemn. It's a pretty big bribe, he told them, but it means she could give me something she knew I wanted without me taking it as a sign she wanted more than she's willing to give, which means she's still interested in me but hasn't worked out a solution to our dilemma. Neither Oliver nor Lewis knew what to say to that either, but Rohim continued regardless. It says a lot. He leant back in his chair, smiling as he changed the subject, and her timing is, as always, impeccable. He tapped the letter on the table as though they hadn't already read it. This, he informed them, is her request. She asks I help you and suggests the value of the gift and its meaning is enough for me to work out how important to her it is that I try. He reached out to a nearby shelf, lifting the laptop that sat there and moving it to the table in front of them. Oliver and Lewis watched as he tapped a few keys and then turned the screen to face them. Those, he said as they gaped, are the wanted posters that were received a half hour after your arrival. If you're very lucky, the clerk on the information desk hasn't reached the end of her shift and my courier can get to her in time, or the 4 parties interested in tracking you are going to know that at least one person on this station has seen you. Courier? I sent one with an offer. It should be one she can't refuse. Does she know it's from you? Rohim gave them a scornful look. Did you ask her where to find my shop? Oliver hung his head, but the man hadn't finished. And then there's the enforcer patrol who noted you when you stopped on the concourse. He gave them an assessing look. Good ploy, by the way, looking at all the levels. It slowed them down. But they checked in with the clerk, and that put an end to any doubts they might have had. Oliver groaned, and Lewis frowned. How are you getting all this? I have hooks in the system, Rohim told them. From the casualness in his tone, he didn't expect them to ask why, but he told them anyway. There are privileges to being a Rorickson, and even though my family think they've got everything secured properly, there are still gaps. They rely on me to ensure nothing gets through those. You're a programmer? Lewis asked, remembering the complexity of some of the station protections and regarding Rohim with wondering eyes. Rohim shook his head. No, but I own the best. Own. Lewis's eyes narrowed and Rohim lifted an eyebrow. It's not what you think, cub. And it was Lewis's turn to raise his eyebrows. Since when did a human use shifter terms? Rohim ignored the challenge, returning his attention to Oliver. If Adele hadn't spoken on your behalf, you'd be unconscious and tucked in stasis boxes awaiting Odyssey's collection, he stated. Oliver looked down at himself and then at Lewis. And since we aren't? Exactly, Rohim told him. I'm fulfilling her request, although I must admit that the reward for turning you in would have gone a long way to outfitting the station with better security, and with ensuring we receive more protection from Odyssey than we currently do, both of which are high-value items. And yet that, and here Oliver gestured toward the gift, means you're willing to forgo those things. That and Adele's regard for me, she is. Rohim paused. What she is to me is not really your business, save that it means I won't be handing you over today. Oliver relaxed a fraction. What else does it mean? It means, as I said before, that Adele has impeccable timing, because even though you do not have the funds for the transport you'll need to get away from here, I am willing to provide you with a way out, in return for a favor. Both Oliver and Lewis paused, turning their heads to study him. He still did not impress them, neither physically nor in personality, and he did not care if his smile was anything to go by. What kind of favor? Oliver asked, and the smile faded. Nothing illegal, for a change, Rohim replied. Except where your good selves are concerned, of course. If I was being legal, I'd be handing you over, so he shrugged. Since I'm not, you have to realize that I don't always operate on what is considered the correct side of the law. Are the station founders aware of this? Oliver asked, and Rohim chuckled. Does my mother know, you mean? He asked, and Lewis shaded his eyes. That was definitely not what Oliver had meant, but it could be taken that way. As if catching his thought, Rohim continued. To answer your question, yes, the station founders, my parents, are aware I occasionally wander through the shady fringes of interstellar life. They also know I make a tidy profit from doing so, and that this profit and the contacts I've established have been the only things to keep the station in the black, and secure, on more than one occasion. So they tolerate it, Oliver concluded, and Rohim's expression darkened. Neither of them are white knights, if that's what you mean, he responded. They've both bent the rules to serve their needs and skimmed through the grey. I just swim a little deeper than they've ventured, but I've never gone further into the dark than any of us could tolerate. I like looking in the mirror in the morning and not hating what I see. So the station truly is a family concern, Oliver concluded, and Rohim nodded. Which brings me to the favour with which you can repay your transport fee. Oliver lifted his cafe to his lips and set his elbows on the table. Do tell. Family concerns involve certain family obligations, he began, and Lewis gave him a wary look. Rohim caught it and smiled. Meaning I am an uncle and I have nieces, he continued. They're currently on station, but we'll be shipping them back to their boarding school in a few days. I've managed to score the task of babysitting the twins and making sure they get to where they need to be. Oliver lifted his eyebrows. You can't just sign them over to an Odyssey cruiser. We tried that. The little pumpkins managed to find a way off the ship at a stopover and take themselves on an unscheduled intersystem tour, running up a large credit debt as they went. By the time my retrieval specialist caught up with them, they were on the verge of being taken for ransom. The family would rather avoid that if possible, and so I have been given the family runabout and the task of ensuring they arrive at school on time and without any adventures in between. He sounded so disgruntled with the idea that Lewis almost laughed. Unfortunately, Rohim caught his expression and his face turned sour. You may laugh, he told Lewis, but the family decided, due to my business proclivities, that I would be the best equipped of all of us to foresee their mischief and prevent it. He gave them an almost pleading look. If I'm honest, I could do with the help. How old are they? Oliver asked, and Lewis wondered if he really wanted to know, or if he was just trying to stall for time. For now, they're 11, but they turn 12 in a few months. Oliver snorted. It's an interesting time in human development, he noted. Don't you have any female bodyguards who could ride shotgun on them? Their bodyguards are all female, Rohim replied, but the family can only afford 4 between them, and they can't be everywhere at once. Oliver nodded and then sighed. Fine. So when do you want to introduce us? Rohim blinked. So you'll do it? He asked hopefully. Oliver shrugged. How long do you think we'll have before we're found if you don't? I'd say word will be out and about your arrival inside the next 8 to 12 hours, and probably inside the next 4. After that, you'll only have as much time as it takes any one of your pursuers to jump in system and dock. You're just lucky that of the four, only the Shadows and Odyssey are considered to have legitimate claims. The Shadows? Lewis's mouth went dry. Yes, their charges are for crimes recognized by human law enforcement. We're obliged to hand you over if they ask. Lewis's heart went cold, and he set his cup on the table, glancing at Oliver as he did so. Oliver's face had become a careful blank. And will you? Not if you help me out on this, Rowan smugly assured him, and Lewis wondered how two young girls could need two werewolf mercenaries to keep them in line. Something told him he really didn't want to know, and he wanted to understand why. It wasn't his place to ask, though. This decision was all Oliver's to make, and he had no advice. Fine, his alpha decided. When do we start? Rohim breathed a sigh of relief. You'll get to meet them tomorrow. I need something to bribe them into going to school without fuss, so I'm going to tell them I've got them a dog each. Oliver choked on his coffee, and Lewis gaped at him. You what? Oliver managed when he finished coughing. I'm going to tell them I've bought them two dogs, Rohim informed him calmly. But we're not, Oliver began, only to have the man cut him short. You have a wolf form, don't you? He asked. Something four-legged and furry? Honestly, they're not from Earth, and they wouldn't know the difference between a wolf and a dog. They'll just see furry and think it's cute. But we're not cute? Rohim challenged. Go on, show me. I'll bet you 10 to the dozen you'll both be the cutest things these kids have ever seen. Oliver looked at him. You wouldn't rather just add two more human guards to their roster? Rohim snorted, shaking his head. We've already tried that, and look how far it got us. 16 systems of credit-powered travel that'll take 3 years for the station to pay off. Wait, they only just pulled this stunt? No, that was the stunt they pulled when they were 10. They're almost 12 now, so last year's little escapade would have been even more expensive if Odyssey hadn't been being extra vigilant and caught them one system away from their departure point. Oliver and Lewis exchanged worried looks. And you think a couple of four-legged friends will stop this from happening? How? Firstly, because I'll threaten to take you away and have you put down if they cause me any trouble. And trust me, once you win their hearts, they'll do anything to keep you alive and well. He stopped, catching Oliver's horrified look. And secondly, Lewis pressed before the Alpha could say anything. And secondly, because you'll be ideally positioned to hear everything the little brats are planning and warn me with enough time to outmaneuver them. He paused, waiting for one of them to interrupt. When they didn't, he continued, and thirdly, and finally, because you'll be in a position to stop them yourselves. And I mean take whatever steps you need, right up to knocking them out and stuffing them into stasis pods if you have to. Really? They're that much trouble? Oliver sounded like he didn't believe it. Really, Rowan told him sourly, they are that much trouble and more. And I'm not sure if even the bribe of a pet is going to be enough to stop them. But it will give me a believable reason to be in possession of two wolves, and give me a reason to take you with me, which is what really matters. When they continued to hesitate, he added, I'm not sure how I'll get you off the station otherwise. Oliver rolled his eyes, and Lewis groaned, but Rohim wasn't finished. He opened his mouth to add more, only to be interrupted when a chime sounded from above the kitchen bench. Rohim frowned, but stopped and opened up the laptop. Oh, excellent! He exclaimed after examining it. The dog crates have arrived. Dog crates? Lewis couldn't blame Oliver for sounding a little outraged. Why do you need dog crates? Rohim gave him a questioning look. How else am I going to get them to believe I've only just had you shipped in? He asked. But when I pinged Adele when I read her letter and asked her, she was more than happy to oblige. But Rohim gave an exasperated sigh. Angeli and Giselle are bright enough to do their research, and since they know I operate on the shady side of the law, they're smart enough not to believe everything their dark horse of an uncle has to say. You've lied to them before, Oliver concluded. Only for their own goods, Rohim protested. And they found out, Lewis added. Rohim set his mouth in an angry line. They're bright for their age, and their parents have a lot to answer for. Lewis just bet they did. Rohim pushed back his seat. I've got to let the delivery guys in, he told them. They'll put the crates in the lounge. He pointed to the sofas set in the other half of the room, and then to a door in the kitchen wall beside the pantry. If you gentlemen wouldn't mind staying out of sight while they do so. With a heavy sigh, Oliver stood, pushing back his chair and glancing at Lewis. Lewis stood, gathering his coffee and his cake. If he was going to have to be a dog for the next however long, he was going to do so on a full stomach. Rohim laughed. Don't worry, they won't be here until tomorrow, and that only because I'll tell them I have a surprise. Shouldn't you wait until you get them to go aboard? Oliver asked. Rohim shook his head. They won't agree until they see what I've got them. Once they meet you, they won't be able to wait to get on board. Which will be 3 days' time, Rohim informed them, and Oliver and Lewis exchanged worried glances. Don't worry, Rohim tried to assure them. I'll move you aboard the Entelschweiss. Even if someone arrives to look for you here, they won't find you. The chime rang again, and he hurried toward the door, gesturing at the other exit as he did. Get out of sight. Oliver took his plate and cup and cast a quick eye over the table. Seeing there was nothing left to indicate Rohim had been entertaining, he led the way into the other room, pulling the door closed behind them. Light, Lewis commanded, relieved when the room slowly grew brighter. The apartment really was tiny, and Rohim had sent them to wait in his bedroom. Nice, Lewis muttered, looking around. He noted the walls lined by statue-filled display cases and wandered over to the glass for a closer look. Don't touch anything, Oliver admonished, gingerly seating himself on the end of the bed and focusing on his cake. I won't. Lewis let his empty coffee cup dangle from his fingers as he dissected his cake with a spoon. He wondered how strict the girls would be about feeding their new pets what was good for them, and hoped they'd be like most kids, and thoroughly irresponsible. Rohim's collection was breathtaking, and Lewis was beginning to appreciate the statue's appeal when he heard heavy footsteps and two loud thumps from outside. Voices signaled the end of the exchange, and then the footsteps retreated. Lewis moved over to the door and finished his cake, listening as a single set of footsteps returned. You can come out now. Lewis looked across at Oliver. When his alpha dipped his chin in a single nod and started to rise, Lewis turned the door handle and stepped out. As much as he'd expected it, he was still glad when Rohim was alone. The man watched him and Oliver emerged and indicated the crates. What do you think? Lewis came 3 steps into the room and stopped short. Oliver ran into him and then stepped around him. Oh, hell no, the alpha rumbled. Rohim looked puzzled. Oh, hell no what? He glanced at the crates. They're the right size, aren't they? Oliver regarded him, and Lewis could see the effort it took for the alpha not to yell at the man. Yes, the boxes were the right size, and no, oh hell to the hells no, they were not acceptable. He bit his lip and let Oliver work out exactly how he wanted to handle it. You are correct on the size, Oliver finally admitted. But Rohim's puzzlement turned to worry. You're not claustrophobic, are you? No, Oliver admitted, and Lewis saw the moment when his alpha decided it was easier not to explain about a history of slavery, werewolf, human, submission, dominance, and everything else wrapped into the knot of complexity tied around his initial reaction. Coward, he thought, but not anywhere where Oliver could hear it. It was no surprise when his alpha changed the subject. We need access to a search engine, he said, preferably one whose users cannot be traced. Rohim's face sharpened with interest. What do you need that for? We need to find out what happened on Axis 58, Oliver told him. You mean you didn't kidnap that child? Oliver snorted. That was no child, at least no child in anything but form, and no, we did not kidnap her. Then who? It's a long story, Oliver cut him off shortly, and we have no time to tell it, but we made a promise, and now we need to find out what happened to her. Rohim's eyes narrowed. What kind of information are you looking for? Oliver sighed. We're going to hack the Alpha 58 Flight Center and orbital databases for a start, and then we're going to try and get into whatever's left of Nettle's server there. while trying to avoid any detection programs the Shadows and Odyssey have left behind. I take it that's just the start, Rohim concluded, and Oliver gave him a sharp nod. Our lives depend on finding the girl before she is killed and before we're caught. Well, if that wasn't laying it on the line, Lewis didn't know what was. He stared at Oliver in disbelief. We need him, his alpha said, and Lewis had to wonder how the man was reading his mind. Rohim glanced from Oliver to Lewis and back. I'll see what I can. A new chime rang through the apartment, and he grabbed the laptop. Well, this can't be good, he murmured, turning the screen so Oliver and Lewis were out of the camera's pickup. I need you both in your wereforms and in the crates now, he snapped in their implants. My nieces have arrived, and I don't know why. To the screen, he said, Briella, I didn't expect to see you so soon. You will not believe what these two brats have done, was not the greeting Oliver or Lewis would have expected, although the now, are you going to let us in or not was entirely understandable. I'm on my way, Rohim promised, snapping the laptop closed and ending the call. He glanced at the two wolves. I really need you furry and confined, he told them, or the deal's off. And you don't know what this is about? No, Rohim admitted, but I can guarantee it's going to fuck our day.